Are we ready?
We are. Okay, welcome
Fantastic.
everyone. I'm going to throw this over to Jennifer Vanderbecken and Nicole Early to kick off today's RC webinar.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer Vanderbecken with Vanderbecken Remodel. I'm the 2021 Remodelers Council Chair, and I, along with our Council's Vice Chair, Melissa Irons, welcome you to today's webinar. We're so glad you're taking the time to be here and believe that it will be incredibly beneficial. So we have the chat open and would love for you to participate as much as you like by commenting in the chat. We also have a Q&A option. So please type in any questions that you have for our speaker, Tim Fowler, there, and we will go through them during the Q&A time at the end. So as for utilizing the chat, let's practice a bit. So go ahead and in the chat, type out what NAHB designation you hold. So maybe a CAPS designation or certified green. Chat out if you have a certified graduate remodeler or a certified graduate associate or even a graduate master remodeler. I can't see, but I think they're coming in. Ah, yes. Excellent. Very good. Yeah. Some have multiple. That's awesome. Very good. I see more coming in. It's a great job. It is so important to celebrate having those designations and the commitment to the industry that they represent. So well done. So our council's preamble or purpose is the Remodelers Council is a fellowship of remodelers and associates that share their acquired industry knowledge and business practices, promote the general welfare of their membership, and sustain participation in impacts through mentorship, education, and service. So as the Remodelers Council Chair, the 2021 Chair, I am fortunate to follow in the footsteps of many amazing remodelers who have chaired the council with enthusiasm and dedication. One such past chair is Michael Tenholzen, and Mike has graciously accepted the invitation to share a few words through a pre-recorded video for all of you.
Hi, I'm Michael Tenholzen, CGR CAPS. And one of my favorite sayings is, all boats are raised by the rising tide. And we currently have that situation right now, where the industry is doing really well and all boats have risen. But it wasn't always that way. And when I was chair in 2010, the tide was out quite a ways. It took the council support, all the membership in order to help everyone to get their boats back where they need to be. And one of my favorite sayings is actually one that I have hanging on the wall in my bathroom. And it's a little plaque, and it just says, "What would you do if you knew you could not fail?" And that's just taking these boats off the tide and figuring out a way to raise them up into the lake. If you can figure that out, you've got a good thing going. Michael Tenholzen, CGR CAPS, Tenholzen Residential, your 2010 chair.
Thanks, Mike. That was awesome. Thank you so much. Let's see. So this is our third webinar this year, and they just keep getting better and better. Be sure to stay tuned and watch for updates. And as you can see on the screen, we have Ari Winswig coming up. We have Jackie Shaw on May 20th. And we also have an event called the Coffee and Chat. And ours, the next one is coming up next Thursday on March 25th. It's a casual, laid back, hour-long networking event coming next Thursday. And it's at 7 a.m. Yes, 7 a.m. So bring your coffee, come and chat with other people in the industry. It's an event for all members, remodelers, and associates, and anyone you think who might be interested. So reach out to Nicole Early for the Zoom link and the calendar invite. Also, Rex is happening. It's happening on June 12th. The virtual show starts at 6:30 p.m. but the pre-show festivities begin at 6 p.m. So be sure to register. Registration is now open, and I've heard there's some great projects, of course. And even though it's a virtual event, you definitely do not want to miss it. So join us then and register now. So this webinar is made possible by some fantastic sponsors, and we would like for them to say a few words. I'd like to introduce Craig Ball, the Business Development Manager at Imbax, who will be introducing each of today's sponsors. So Craig, take it away.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yes, it's hard to imagine we're already at March, and we've got some familiar faces with us today. All of these folks, all these businesses are our annual sponsors of today's event. And let's start off with KDL, representing Western Clearview Railing System, Marcus Klotz. Marcus.
Hey, thanks a lot, Craig. How's everybody going? Just wanted to kind of give an update on what's been going on with KDL Enterprises. We're pushing a couple new railing styles that have been attracting a lot of the more modern consumers. We've had a lot of commercial projects that are really pushing horizontal railing, which to some homeowners acts kind of like a ladder, but we haven't really had much trouble with it. One of the things I wanted to touch base with those of you that aren't aware is we are a local railing manufacturer. We're based out of Kent, Washington. One of the things that I think stands out is that we offer an on-site consultation free of charge to your customer. That's something that you should be taking advantage of. You could find our product on display at your local Dunn Lumber. And we're also running a special right now on our skylights. So if you are in need of custom size skylights, we can have them delivered to Dunn Lumber within 7 to 10 business days.
Well, I think we've lost Marcus's audio. Next up, we'd like to hear from Jeff Chase with Velux Skylights. Jeff.
Sorry, just 1 second. My camera is not coming on. I think the host has disabled my camera. Okay, I'll just go ahead and speak. Hi, everyone. This is Jeff Chase with Velux. Thank you very much for being here today. I wanted to remind everyone that the federal tax credits on solar skylights and solar blinds continues for 2021. It's 26% this year, and this applies both to the product and the labor costs of the solar product. So it's a great deal for the homeowner. If you do nothing else, it would be a great idea just to automatically include solar blinds in the skylights whenever you sell them. And that's because by the time they take the tax credit, it's usually a free upgrade for them. Because a few things about these blinds is, one, it gives the customer the ability to control the light. Plus, it makes the skylight way more energy efficient. In the wintertime, when they close the skylight at night, they save a lot of heat. In the summertime, when they close the skylight during the hottest part of the day, they keep the house much cooler. And they come pre-installed with a radio frequency remote. So it's really a simple upgrade for the customer. These products are available at Dunn Lumber, and thank you very much. I hope you guys have a great meeting today.
Great, thank you, Jeff. And next, we'd like to hear from Miles Snyder with Milgard Windows and Doors. Go ahead, Miles.
Hey everyone, Miles Snyder here, your local Milgard outside sales rep. Just want to give you guys some exciting updates here at Milgard. The one being the upcoming launch of our new black trinsic capstock vinyl window. That's an acrylic cap right over our vinyl substrate. That's going to be a exterior, interior black option to help meet that high demand for that black contemporary look. We're really excited about this product. It should be launching here probably mid-April is what we're trending towards. So this will be for Trinsic only. Also with Trinsic, you get the features and benefits of glass breakage warranty, narrow frame, even sight lines, and our award-winning Smart Touch lock. So this window will have all the bells and whistles. So we're really excited about this product. Pricing is available at any one of your Dunn Lumber local lumber yards, or visit any one of our certified dealers. So we're really excited, and hopefully we can see some of this product in your guys' project. So appreciate your guys' time, and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Miles. Next up, Kevin Kunka with Trex. Kevin.
Yeah, hi. Hey, thanks for having me out here. And just want to introduce myself. My name is Kevin Kunka. I'm the district manager with Trex Decking. And you can find all the information on trex.com. Also, wide range of products and outdoor living space, from decking to railing to rain escapes and lighting and etc. The products itself, we got a good, better, best lineup. Try to keep things simple. We got decking anywhere from under $2 to over $4 a linear feet. So with some of the pricing challenges and availability challenges of wood, we're a great option on that side. So want to thank everybody, and give me a call anytime if you have any questions, or email me too. You can reach me at kkunka@trex.com. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. And if at any point, if you folks would like to contact any of our sponsors and you don't happen to have their contact information, feel free to reach out to any of us at MBAX, and we'd be more than happy to set you up with them. And as always, if you're in the market or considering the products that they represent, we encourage you to support these sponsors that in turn support our Remodelers Council. So thank you very much, sponsors, and back to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you so much. I have just lost my script. Oh, but I want to introduce Tim. How do I make this smaller? Oh, seriously. All right, I'm just gonna have to talk off the cuff. I'm sorry, Tim, but I think Tim is amazing. He's done so much for remodelers the last several years. He's written a couple of books that I've read, and I know that many of you have as well. His latest is called Dear Remodeler, and it's excellent. Let's see, what else can I remember? He's been working with Remodelers Advantage since 2017, and systems and processes are his. He is a guru, and so we are fortunate to have him here with us, and I'm so glad you're here, Tim. So welcome, and please take it away.
All right, I've unmuted. I have to share my screen. Let's see, it's screen one, share, and then I want to open up the chat, and then I want to start from the beginning. Okay, so if someone would just holler at me and make sure they can see that, I'd appreciate it.
Looks great, Tim.
Okay, here we go. All right, so mostly what I'm known for is the lead carpenter system and production management in general. And one of the things that I've seen throughout working with a lot of companies is the frustration or the challenge of, of really walking the client through the whole process and making it a great experience for the client. We all know how to build things. We all know there are certain things like cleaning up and communication that are really critical. But many occasions, the client is a great client through the sales process, and then through production, something happens. And so I've been thinking very completely, I guess, about what's going on with client satisfaction and expectation. So there's some research that's been done by American Express, and I actually went online to find these items, but it says that 86% of the customers are willing to pay more for a better experience. This comes from superoffice.com. And there's a whole field of study called CX, if you want to Google it. And the customer experience is defined by all the interactions and experiences your customer has with your business throughout, and you'll see it in red there, the entire customer journey from the first contact to becoming a happy and loyal customer. So the other thing to note, and I think is really important distinction here, is the customer experience is different than what we typically call about as customer service. And so it dawned on me that one of the big challenges for remodeling companies is getting information about what the client expects and what we're going to achieve through the experience to follow through the entire project. And so that's what I'm going to try to chart for you tonight is how do you grab that client right off the bat in the sales experience, but then keep them with that same excitement all the way through the project. So again, the things that I was looking at online about customer experience, there are 7 things, and I've sprinkled these throughout the presentation. You'll see them come up in green letters, and it'll just kind of refer back to these items. But make sure the company has a clear experience vision. Understand your customers, create an emotional connection with your customers, capture customer feedback in real time, very, very important. Train the team based on client feedback, get regular feedback from the team, and measure the return on your investment from a great customer experience. So you're going to see those come up in green throughout the presentation. And I just, I highlighted them here so you'd know what they were when we got there. So the first thing that comes up is there a clear vision of what your client experience is, what you want it to be? What does your company want that experience to be? And you have to make sure that this is clearly defined from sales all the way through production. And so, in other words, it's not, right? It's not, sales saying, hey, my job is to get the sale. Now, I know there's no salespeople listening in on this call that think that's all there is to it, right? They understand that it goes beyond that. But I do think production tends to feel like, and again, kind of a big generalization, my job is to build this thing, get this thing built, and, get done with it. Now, there's things that we do like cleaning up and a weekly meeting and things like that that are part of what we believe to be a great customer experience. But what I really want to emphasize is that point that was made in the last slide, that it's not about what we do, but it's about the experience that they have. And it's different for different people. So some people really get excited about X, and then the next client doesn't care about X. So their experience is not as good because you focused on X. And so I think there's a real challenge for us to communicate and be able to pass information, if you will, through the chain. Now, I like this circle. This is something I put together years ago to explain a couple of different things. And so it started out as an explanation for a good production process or system. What I'm using it for tonight is through the process of the job. So the clients are right at the center, very important. They're not the most important thing, but certainly very important. And what the job starts with the sales process. Now, everybody listening in here knows that before the client ever calls the remodeler, they have expectations. They have a vision. They have an idea of what they think this process is going to be like. And what I want to challenge everybody to do is to start thinking that part of the sales team's responsibilities is to find out what those expectations are. So it's the thing that we tend to focus on is, what kind of a kitchen do you want? What's the design? What can we provide? How much does it cost? All those kinds of things. And so what I'm suggesting is that perhaps one of the things that comes out of that sales process is a list of expectations that the salesperson has mined from the mind of the client. And now it's not, you can't just walk in and say, what are your expectations? You have to get them to tell you what they're thinking. And then, those of you who've heard me speak before, I love checklists, but maybe there's a list that the salesperson can go down through and just check off. Like, yeah, they did talk about the dust quite a bit. Yeah, they did talk about noise quite a bit. They talked about their kids' safety quite a bit. You know, all these different things that if you've been in this very long, you've experienced all these things that clients are thinking. And maybe if we had something where we could document what we find out in the sales process, just like we're going to document what kind of stove they want, what kind of windows they want, what kind of railing they want, what kind of decking they want, right? We're going to find that all out and we'll pass that along to production. But maybe we need to be sure we pass on sort of those expectations. What are they dreaming of? What are they thinking of? What is it that they're expecting when the job gets started? Now, here's a bunch of them that you'll recognize. No dust, a lot of cleanliness, very quiet, on time. Everything will be done in one day. You can take care of my prize poodle. No, I can't change my routine to accommodate a big hole in the wall. I know you said this, but I don't think you really meant it, right? There's always that. I know you said this would happen, but I didn't think you were being serious. So that's just a few that might show up on a checklist somewhere. But the idea is that sales in their conversation should be making note of expectations. And then when we get to this thing that we call the turnover or the handoff, sales is ready to share with the production team, what are you walking into? What is it that you should expect from what our client's expecting? Now, we're going to give you all the plans. We're going to give you scope. We're going to give you all those details. But there's this little bit of knowledge that quite often doesn't get passed on. Now, the turnover meeting is that sales to production handoff, just in case someone is listening that hasn't heard of this before. It's about information, and it requires about a 2 to 4 week lead time for it to really work well before a job actually starts. And you'll see the green there. One of those key 7 customer experience items was understand your customers. And so what I'm thinking is that sales has a pretty good idea who the customer is, not just what they bought, but who they are. But then we pass it over to production, who's going to spend the next 3 months, 4 months, 5 months with them. And we don't get that project manager and lead carpenter as up to speed on who the client is as much as we focus on what the job is that we're doing. So the big thing that I've been trying to focus on with everybody is what's not written down in the binder. And that's one of those things that tends to be not written down. What are the client expectations? What are their hot buttons? What was their past experience? What were things that they repeatedly expressed? What did they challenge? When did they say, yeah, but? What were their questions about? Did they ask questions about the workers and how they would behave on site? All of those kinds of things, if we can pass that on to the project manager or the lead carpenter, depending on your system, then I think we're going to have a better experience for the client, because it goes from the salesperson who understands this now to somebody who needs to pick up the ball, so to speak, and run with it, with the experience being the same as a salesperson. And think about that. Salespeople are trained to have a great experience with the client. That's part of that sales process. And we haven't spent as much time having our field crews have that great experience as well with the client. And so what we want is to pass on these other things. And then there's some other items that really go on in this meeting, but I don't want to focus on them particularly here. But the last one on the slide here, the important visuals, this may be something that does impact it. And that is, I met a company in California who, when the client was on site with the project manager, the client would say to the project manager, you know, it doesn't look like the 3D rendering that I saw in the design phase. And the project manager would shrug their shoulders and go like, what 3D rendering? And it was such a simple thing to show that project manager all the things that the client had been shown. and get them ready to have that experience or have that conversation with the client. So it wasn't as uncomfortable and as difficult. Another company, I think in Minnesota, they would share with their project managers the inspiration pictures that the clients brought in. This is what we'd like to have. Well, what they bought might have been a little bit less than that, might have been a little bit more, but the inspiration pictures helped the project manager get on the same wavelength with the client and understand the client a little bit, which makes the experience during production that much more helpful and productive. So after the turnover meeting, we've turned the job over to production management. Now, for some of you, that's a production manager. For some of you, that's the owner of the company. For some of you, you're turning it directly over to a project manager and they're running with it at that point. So that's fine. It doesn't matter. A lot of different size companies on this call. And so what I want to emphasize to you is during this time between the turnover to production and what happens over here where the job starts is what one company, and I'll share with you in a minute, they call the dark period. In other words, the client has been getting a lot of attention from sales for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, whatever it is, to get this job designed and sold. And then all of a sudden it goes dark, right? And what does the client start thinking? Well, here's the psychology of it, okay? So it's a basic human instinct. In the absence of information, we fill in the blanks, and it is almost always negative. Now, some of us are just happy, Pollyanna people where everything's wonderful. And we would say, that company took my $50,000 check and I haven't heard a word from them. Isn't that wonderful? You know what? People don't think that, right? And so what we have to think about is that sometimes we lose the client emotionally. We lose the client in this dark period. Now, we just recorded a podcast with some people who've done some study on this. When it comes up, I encourage you to listen to it. But the dark period between when the job is sold and when the job actually starts. And so the client is wondering what's going on. And we often lose them and they start to distrust or they start to question or they start to say, man, I better watch these people carefully. I wonder what happened. And so the idea here is that somebody needs to stay in touch with the client. Now, I personally believe it ought to be production because what? It's been passed over to production. Now, sales design may still have some, selections to make or something like that, but I think production needs to jump in. Now, what they told us on the podcast was from their research, what they found out was that it needs to be at least 2 times a week with varying channels, whether it's email, text, phone call, written letter, all the different ways that we communicate with people. Somehow your company is communicating to the client. And what I always envision in this is just like, okay, what are we doing? In other words, an email might go out that said, just want to let you know, we just ordered all your cabinets and we expect them in on such and such a date. Or, I'm going to be popping by to remeasure all those windows on Thursday at, 2:00. Just wanted to let you know so you're prepared for me to be there. All the things that get done during that time period need to be communicated to the client so they know somebody's thinking about me. Somebody's thinking about my project. I'm not in the dark with where this all stands. Now, production people tend to be so engulfed in other projects, right, that are already ongoing, that already have their own difficulties, that this is the thing that gets left where we don't do it. So highly encourage companies to make sure that somebody's doing it. And again, I think the production people ought to be doing it just from the standpoint of starting that relationship with the client, getting that communication going. So the next part of this whole thing is the planning period. Now, if I'm talking to a whole bunch of people, I'm saying, look, you got a bunch of carpenters, project managers, you got to debug this thing, plan it out. But the point I want to make here is that you'll see right there in that third bullet point where it says the project manager needs to plan for the success of the job on time, on budget, delighted client. That's our trifecta, right? Well, almost all the time we're planning the schedule, right? And we look at the budget and we say, you know, how are we going to make the budget? But how many of us literally sit and think, how am I going to delight this client? This client, not all my clients, but this client. Okay. And that's the point here, that the project manager needs to take some time and say, you know what? Budget, schedule, very important. But guess what? I have to plan to delight a client. Okay. Now it doesn't. And again, let me just say this. Most of the people listening in on this call, you're successful remodelers. You have good things going on. Your clients hire you because you're good, right? And so they're not going to be impressed with cleanup every day. They're going to appreciate it, but they're not going to be impressed. They're not going to be impressed with the fact that you have a weekly meeting. They're not going to be impressed with the things that you do all the time. You have to stop and think about what's going to impress that person. And if I can do that thing, then all the little mistakes that happen, you know they do, all the little mistakes that happen are water under the bridge if I can just accomplish that one thing. So what do? So right here, again, in red is kind of the big ticket for this particular point. Is that it? What did I get from sales design? What did they tell me about the expectations of the client? I'm pretty sure I've got an example coming up here pretty soon. And then that project manager has to say, what will I or what will we do about that expectation? So sales has found out that this client is very, very nervous and very concerned about this. So what are we going to do to help mitigate that and make sure that client has a great experience? Now, don't just think about it, right? Because a plan's not a plan till what? It's written down. So write it down. This is what we're going to do to make sure that this client is delighted. Now, I've got a couple little things there. So you write it down. Maybe your trades need to be involved. So maybe they need to get an email or official document that says, notice this project, the client is very concerned about making sure the doors get locked up. So everybody needs to think about that. And then maybe there's a way, and I don't know how to do this really, but I'm just kind of thinking off the top. Maybe there's a way to put something on site that's a nice, friendly way of saying, we're watching out for you, clients, some kind of a sign, some kind of a nice item that the client will go look at it and go, hey, they paid attention. They listened to what I said. I wasn't just somebody buying a remodeling project. I am special. They took notice. Okay. So that's the main thing that I want to talk about with this debug. Obviously, you're going to be reviewing plans, things like that, and then making up a questions list. So here's the example that I said I'd share. So let's just suppose the client's expectation is that there is a absolute cannot be moved finish date. Okay. I mean, and it doesn't really matter whether it's real or not. It's in their head that this is never going to move. Okay. Well, what does the project manager need to do? Well, they need to schedule a realistic schedule that's going to finish before that client date, right? Not on that, because what's going to happen? It's going to get messed up, right? Something's going to happen that's going to push that schedule out, and then we violated their expectations. Okay. Now, it doesn't matter whether it's a realistic expectation, right? We bought it. We listened to it. We heard it. What about your trades? Maybe your trades need a little bit of a warning about that. And then, like I'll show you in the next illustration, maybe at the pre-construction meeting, we need to talk about that expectation in a way that helps them understand that if they change something, what? It's going to push it past that date. And so that's another part of this dealing with the expectation. Here's the other one. Client expectation. No interruption to my normal working day. They're working from home now, right? And so the power's never going to be off. Water's never going to be off. That's their expectation because somehow they thought that. Well, project manager, you need to get ready for that project, that pre-construction meeting, and have that reality conversation with the client. And then you need to look at how can we make the disruptions very, very minimal. In other words, it isn't okay to just shut the power off. We have to find a way to keep these 5 things plugged in. Maybe there's a generator, maybe all kinds of different things, but somebody has to think about that in order to make sure that the client gets the experience that we want them to have. So the next thing is the pre-construction meeting, and I alluded to that just a minute ago. Now, basically the pre-construction meeting is the time when the client gets introduced to the production staff, project manager, lead carpenter, in a formal way. So there's a formal start to the project. And the big deal is right there under the what. It transfers the responsibility from sales in the client's eyes to the new site manager, lead carpenter, project manager. And the other thing that can happen is it's a great opportunity for production to start, like, do I understand the job the way the client understands the job? In other words, we're going to have some conversation. So there's a lot of things that go on, but what I want to focus on is that second bullet point where it says sets the stage for success. And so in this pre-construction meeting, like I indicated with that example in the last slide, the project manager / lead carpenter needs to have a voice that starts interacting with the client. And you see the green there, that was part of those 7 customer experience things. Create an emotional connection with your customer. So here's the way a lot of pre-construction meetings go. We're going to do this, 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 and then we're going to do this. And can you show me the electrical and the water shutoffs? It's just so non-connective that when the client leaves that meeting, they wonder, like, who's my person, right? Who do I turn to? And so one of the goals of that pre-construction meeting has to be, can that project manager make some kind of a connection with the client? And I'm going to suggest that part of it is just asking them questions about what are their expectations? What are they thinking? What do they want? And every project manager needs to write down 10 to 15 different ways that they'll ask the client about their expectations. And I've put a couple of them up there. What will make this a success for you? That's a way of asking, like, what are your expectations? Or for you to rave about us, what do we have to accomplish? Another one might be for you to put a 5-star review on Google for us. What would we have to do? What would we do? And then let them answer, but then have another question to kind of follow up so they get a chance to talk about their feelings about the job, not just we like the cabinets but what are our fears? What are we anxious about? What is it that is challenging us in this experience? And so that's the big deal in terms of the pre-construction meeting with the client. The second thing is that I think it's appropriate for production to set their expectations with the client as well. And the big one is this. In the conversation with the production manager or the client, the project manager or the lead carpenter would say something like this: Mr. and Mrs. Fowler, it's so great. I'm really excited about working on your job. I got your plans and scope from Bill, your salesperson, 2 weeks ago, and I've been looking over them to get ready to work on your project. Is there anything in your mind that you're expecting that's not written in the scope and the plans and then just shut up and let the client talk. So the idea here is you're giving them an expressed opportunity to tell you if they know something's missing or if they're afraid something's missing or whatever they want to tell you in that expression. Most of them are going to say, no, we've spent so many months on this. There's nothing that isn't in there, right? Okay, good. Thank you. That's great. So therefore, Mr. and Mrs. Fowler, if anything comes up that's not in the plans or in the scope, you'll be expecting me to write up a change order. Is that correct? See, what I'm doing is I'm setting expectations with the client. Now they, well, wait, Tim. I'm not sure that's what we meant. Okay. But see, I'm getting it out. They're going to talk about it a little bit. Well, are you going to write a change order about this? Well, let's talk about that. Let's get that out in the open and find a way. And you notice I threw that line in there. What will you be doing to mitigate disturbance? Like from that example that I gave you, so they're concerned about the disturbance. And so what are you going to do? I know, Mr. Fowler, that you work from home and that you pretty much have to be on the computer, 8 hours every day when we're working. But there's going to be some times when the power is going to go off. So this is what we're going to do. This is what I'm proposing we do to make sure your computer stays up and running, right? And right there, before you're in the middle of the job, you're having that conversation about their concerns when the project's running. And then you establish the weekly meeting, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So more of the agenda for that meeting, and most of you are doing this. The last item here is what I want to kind of focus on. Most of you have seen the emotional homeowner chart. I've got it on the next slide in case you haven't. But what I want to tell you is that I think it's a really good idea, again, project manager or lead carpenter, to tell the client how they might feel or might react during some aspect of the project. And the emotional homeowner chart is a perfect tool for doing that. Now I'll illustrate it like this. So I think if I was designing one for my company, I would, just start with demolition, because that's mostly where production will start. And I would say, so for example, right when we start this thing, everybody's excited. It's so much fun. In fact, things go so fast that you're probably going to come home from work one day and say, you know what? It looks to me like they're going to be done in 3 weeks, not 3 months, right? Because that's the way it looks. I mean, things happen so fast during this first phase. And so what you're telling the client is basically, it's going to take the 3 months. Okay. You might think it's happening really, really fast, but it's going to take all 3 months. So you're going to tell them that. So when this happens, they go like, oh yeah, Tim told me that's the way I was going to feel about it. Then you get into this phase here. Then we get into the rough ends. And, we do the plumbing, electrical. This is what all happens. And you'll notice it starts going down because a lot of our clients will come home from work one day and they'll say, I wonder if anybody was here. And then what? They start going negative. They start calling. What's happening? What's going on? The distrust starts to build, right? So what you do is you say, look, tell you what, you may have this feeling, but I'm going to give you a guarantee that if we're not going to be here working, I will call you the day before, or at the very least, the morning of, and let you know that. Is that okay with you? Right? And so what are you doing? You're setting them up. You're telling them what you're going to do, and you're helping them understand how they might feel. And then you say, drywall is probably the most disturbing part of the whole job. It's messy. It's loud. It takes more time than everybody thinks it ought to take. All those things that they will experience, tell them what they're going to experience. And then of course, here's the rebound. When we start that painting, you're going to be so excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then, oh, by the way, have a big party for us when we're all done. Bottom line is, what I'm talking about here is, don't leave the client to figure out what's going on themselves. Communicate ahead of time what they may feel, what they may think. How do you want, and what do you want them to do? Do you want them to call you? Do you not want them to call you? Do you want a text? How do you want them to respond to you in these times when they start feeling all these things? And I think that's very, very important for a project manager or a lead carpenter to do at that pre-construction meeting. Now, if your lead carpenter is not used to doing stuff like this, train them. It may be more appropriate for someone else to do it, but it really is good for the person that the client's going to interact with to do that with the client. So the next part of the circle of life here is the job gets turned over to the lead carpenter or the project manager. They become the daily contact or the daily communication with the client. And what they do at that point, of course, becomes hugely impactful on the customer experience. So this is when they're doing the demo, they're doing the framing, they're doing, all the work that's going on that job site. And for all the lead carpenters and project managers that may be listening in tonight, we tend to focus on the 2x4s, the nails, the glue, the drywall, the wiring, all of that kind of thing. But you'll see on my list of what gets done, the very first one is client communication. That's obvious to everybody listening in. The number one customer satisfaction indicator is communication. And we don't have time to get into all the little details of that. But the idea is, are we in regular communication, and not just, a text to say hi or something like that, but we have some communication where the client has the opportunity to talk to you about what they're thinking and what they're feeling. I think it was Robert Reich, who was Treasury Secretary a while back, was talking about why he left government. And he said he had 2 teenage sons. And he said, now teenage boys are like clams. And if you're not there when they open up, you're going to miss it. And that's kind of true about our clients as well. Now, some clients will tell you whatever, right? But many of them are waiting until the opportunity. And so we have to make sure that we allow them plenty of time for communication. Weekly meetings, which I'm going to go into a detailed thing about that in just on the next slide. But then I think project managers, lead carpenters ought to be taking progress pictures. And if you're using a platform like Buildertrend or CoConstruct, posting them, because what? They're going to the client at work, dinging their email, and the client's pulling them up going like, oh, look what's going on at my house. It's a communication tool, and it keeps the client informed, right? They want to stay involved. And so that is one way that it happens. And then, of course, there's all the other things that a project manager, lead carpenter has to do. And this is only just a fraction of that. But what's in red is what's really critical in terms of the client experience. Now, the client meetings, and again, many of you are doing client meetings. The standard sort of agenda for client meetings is you talk about the schedule, what have we accomplished, what's coming up, talk about decisions that need to be made. One of the things that I think is important is, instead of just telling the client they need to decide on a light fixture, I think they need to be told what happens if they don't decide, what happens if they delay, because they don't know. And you need to be real. It can't be just a threat, but it needs to be real. If the electrician cannot install that light fixture, we may lose him for 2 weeks in the current climate. So we need that light fixture. Tile selection, right? Why do you have to have a tile selected 4 months before it's going to be installed? Clients don't understand that every tile they pick is coming from Italy on a freighter. It's just like, And so we have to tell them what might happen if we don't get these things selected. But slide on down there, change orders, concerns. In a podcast that we did with a project manager in Scottsdale, Arizona, or actually with a client for a company in Scottsdale, Arizona, one of the things they told us was that their project manager did a great job of just finding a way to ask, how are we doing? And they shared some great examples of how the project manager just kept asking at every weekly meeting, just a different way, but he just wanted to know what's really going on. And through that, the client knew that they were listening. And when they reacted or responded to those concerns, then the client really knew they were listening. And you'll see it in green there, right? Customer feedback in real time. Let's not wait till we get a guild quality survey. Let's not wait till we do our, 3-month check after the job's over. Every week, if we can find out how the client's doing every single week, then we stand a much better chance of fixing whatever problems are there, but also maintaining that great experience. Now, we're winding down here. This is just a quick slide. Managing clients, be assertive, ask for their commitment, maintain eye contact unless it's a culture that doesn't like eye contact. Understand Southwest American, Indian, and maybe even Asian cultures, eye contact isn't the way to go about it. Just watch out for that. Don't run from your problems and document your conversations. So we get to the end of the job and we have the debrief or the autopsy that some people call it. Now, you'll notice right here, train the team based on client feedback. So that debrief is the opportunity for us to say, all right, how did we do with customer satisfaction, delighted client? And let me say something about our surveys. I think sometimes the way we survey our clients is mostly about getting a good rating as opposed to really finding out how we served them. So just check your surveys out and make sure that you're asking the questions that need to be asked to find out, did they have a great experience? And then the other one, get regular feedback from your team. But how did we do with the client? And talk about that as part of that debrief, because everybody on that team can offer something, right? They can offer some kind of a idea about what happened with the client. Did they have a great experience? Was there some challenges to it? And then by all means, please, 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 please do not write the client off. Oh, they just had a bad day, or they just became negative, or they just didn't like us for some reason. Please don't do that, because when you do that, then you lose the experience and you lose the learning of the experience. You should always say, yeah, they got a bad attitude, but what did we do that caused it, right? What did we do that made that happen? And then you can start changing your process to make sure that that experience continues all the way through. So I've got just a couple of thought questions here. This is the next to the last slide. So if you want to start entering some questions, feel free to do that. Maybe you have already in the question and answer box. I don't have that open. But just for fun, why don't you get your team together, or maybe do it virtually? What were some of the off-the-wall expectations that clients have had? Maybe that starts your checklist from sales to production. What can sales do to better inform production about a client's expectations? Pick an expectation common in your company and create a pathway to meet that expectation. In other words, take a real example and say, okay, if we do this, 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 and this, we should be able to meet that expectation. Talk about some of the ways that the project manager, lead carpenter can find out the client's expectations firsthand, like in that pre-construction meeting. And then, is there a need for us to get better feedback from our clients on the expectations and their experience that we provide for them? So maybe these are some questions you can bat around with your team and just like, are we hitting it, or are there some things that we need to work on? So here's my contact information. I've really enjoyed being in Seattle, although this time was a little weird because it's actually 8 o'clock my time, and it feels funny to be giving a seminar this late in the evening. But I did think it was a great thing because guess what? I didn't have to get caught in that traffic just to be able to speak to everybody. So here's my contact information. And feel free to get in touch with me if you'd like to. The podcast is there. We have a lot of fun with that. I have a monthly newsletter, and I'll be happy to share whatever I can with you. So let's go ahead and open it up for questions.
So while we wait for questions, I just want to plug, you can't see it, that silly background, The Dear Remodeler. It's such a great book. I have it both on Audible, and my husband, Ron, asked me to order the actual copy so we could have it. And it's a great book. It really, really is. Tim, we have a question. Do you see it, or do you want me to read it to you?
I see it. I've got the question book open
Hey.
from Nathan. Asking about client concerns. I feel like when I ask if they're concerned about anything, they might think why I ask that. What about asking what items they think we should do differently? Just asking for advice on how to word that. I think you're going to have to experiment a little bit, Nathan, because one of the things about it is we're all only comfortable with what we're comfortable with. So I could give you, what I'm comfortable with. But I think you don't want to be quite that direct. So you maybe using words like expectations, or maybe even what are some things you've seen, if they mention, maybe ask them if they watch do-it-yourself television, right? I don't watch it, so I don't even know how to say it. But and they say, oh yeah, we've watched a lot of that. Say, well, what have you learned from that? And then that will start to tell you what their feelings are about remodeling. And so there's that avenue. Or again, I like just expectations. And when I was a production manager, it's one of the things that we did back then. We would say, what are your expectations of the production process? And they would look at me kind of funny. And then I could say, well, some people are really concerned about the safety of their kids or their dogs getting loose. I'm just thinking, is there anything like that? And I think one of the other things to always remember is that the first thing that somebody says is not always the root of it. And so you always want to ask more questions. And so this is the sales technique, right? Everybody that sells knows this. You start asking questions, and then what? Then you can answer after you've gotten down. Now in the, oh boy, I could just keep on going. Do we have all night, Jennifer? No? Okay. But I mean, one of the things in the lean process, there's this thing called the 5 whys. And the people have studied people, found out that if you ask why 5 times, you will eventually get to the root of what they're really trying to get to. And the same thing would be true for a client concerns. They may say, they're concerned about dust, but it may really be that somebody has a heart condition and then, whoa, boy, you better listen to that. So you may need to just dig in a little bit on that. I'm hoping that helps. Okay. So in the chat box, April says the client's detailed orientation and their ability to visualize or not is a key thing that the design team is able to tell the production team as well. Very good, April. Thank you. Yeah, that's a big deal. And, again, I think it's important to talk through these things. Like, how do they make decisions? How does the client make decisions? Does the one, I'm going to say spouse, partner, go like, this is what I want, like 2 seconds after it's in front of them. And then the other one goes, wait a minute. All right, well, that would be good for a project manager to know. How do they make decisions? How do they communicate? Have you ever been involved with a client, a husband and wife, or a couple, and they fight with each other in your presence? And I'm so uncomfortable. It's like, why are they yelling at each other? And this is just the way they communicate. It's normal for them. And so you throw a project manager in there and the husband and wife at that first client meeting, and they start fighting with each other. They're going to run probably, so it's all those kinds of things that if you share those with the production team, they are better off in terms of working with the client. All right, great. I really like the progress check-in for the project. Communication is so important. Very, 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 very so. Very, very true. And there's all kinds of different ways to communicate. I really encourage everybody, listen to this podcast that we have that's coming out. It's probably in 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, but it's by a guy. Oh gosh. Anyway, I forgot his name. Sorry. But they've done some research on this dark period, and it's phenomenal what they found out about how people react in the absence of information. And their recommendation was, at least 2 touches a week, 2 contacts a week. And he said, spread them around, email, text, things like that. The other interesting thing that they said was that texting will quite often get you a response before email will. So if you need an immediate response, texting is the way to get that done. Now, I'm old enough where I go like a phone call is the way I get it done. I have to learn, right? I have to learn how people communicate these days. Very good. Okay, anything else I can answer? It doesn't have to be about this presentation. It can be about anything that you might think I might know something about. Be happy to. I think you can tell I love to talk and I love to share.
You can also tell that you're a very seasoned presenter.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I think you have so much great information. It's people are digesting it.
Yeah. And again, I'll just say right here that, I've been to Seattle a lot of different times, and I've worked directly with a number of companies there. I know there are a lot of Remodelers Advantage members there. And I'm really hoping, I actually talked with my nephew who lives in Seattle. I said, how about if I come out and we climb Mount Rainier? And he said, well, we could, and then I found out it was like a 3-day experience. And I said, we're not going to do that. And a lot of money. We're not going to do that. But I am trying to get back out there and climb some mountains with him. So maybe I can meet up with some folks personally at that time and help out that way as well.
That would be amazing. Yes. Mount Pilchuck. That would be a good day hike.
Cool.
Yeah. One thing that we have in our company is a ground rules contract, and just some of the things that you talked about tonight, I would like to revisit that because I think there can be more there. And so this has been great. Very, very inspiring.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Well, if there isn't anything else, I guess we'll let you go. And
everybody's going to have great client experiences now.
That's right. Oh, Todd, he has a question.
Have you ever been in a lawsuit with a client? The answer is no, I have not been. And, I guess all I could say about that is, again, I did a podcast with a fellow from Arizona, Flagstaff, Arizona, Dennis Dixon, who has been like a, what do they call it? The experienced contractor voice in the litigations. And he says most of his experience has been the lawsuits are around change orders not being written up and communication errors. And so I think, again, that's part of the challenge is, can you find out if somebody's upset about you before it gets there, right? And so if you can deal with it further upstream, then you may have a better experience along the way. What do you do if your client hires a contractor on the side without using a change order? What do you do if your client hires like a different contractor on the side without using it? Oh man, that needs to be ground rule number 1. Yeah, that's got to be a contractual thing. I would say you get that in your contract that they can't do that, and get them to initial it so that it's really clear that can't be done, and possibly what the ramifications for that are, and so it might be pulling off the job. If you do that, our contract is broken. No, but I've never had that experience, so I don't know exactly how I would deal with it. See, they're trying to stump me now, Jennifer.
Yeah, they
And
are.
they're doing a good
coming up
job.
with some good ones.
There's Jim. Do you try to establish who of the couple is the main point of contact at the beginning of the job? If this agreement falls apart and you start getting different directions from each side, how would you get that back on track? So yes, I think that's a good idea to figure out who the main contact is. However, I understand from legal circles that if both names are on the contract, then anything legal has to be signed by both parties, like a change order or a selection or something like that. So you can't get two signatures on the contract and then only deal with one of the clients, and particularly in terms of legal documentation. And I suspect that change orders for sure, but also things like just a contract extension in terms of time, which might be a contract or a change order, but also selections become, part of this written body of documentation. So getting them back on track, I think that has to be an in-person meeting. And I would probably go as far as to say that if you have project managers or lead carpenters, that perhaps the owner of the company holds that meeting and then holds the client's feet to the fire, because it's very, very hard for a project manager to have that much assertiveness or, chutzpah, I guess is what you would say, to say it has to be this way. And so I would say get a bigger authority involved and have that one-on-one, one-on-two meeting, or two-on-two, the project manager, the owner of the company, and the two clients, and try to get it back on track. Part of it may be, I think part of it would be finding out, like, why is this going on? And, again, you get into some areas that you don't want to with that, but it might help you understand why that's happening. How do you handle a homeowner wanting to use their own sub for one of the phases? Our friend is a painter. So the best practice that I've heard, and particularly like painting or tile or something like that is fine with us, but our contract is completed, we're paid, and then you can bring your person in. If it's a time critical trade contractor, I would say you say no. That's not the way we work. And because you and we all know on this call that it's going to be a mess. You have no control with that trade contractor. And so, but things like paint, things like tile, you can be all done, even like a tile floor. I did have this one thing happen. The company I was selling for here in Rhode Island, they did a project on a bathroom and, sealed everything really, really well. And a painter came in, took the elbow of the shower head out to paint around it because the tile didn't go up quite that far, and then put it back in without sealing it. And of course it leaked, and the client got mad at us. And so the guy I was working with went back, fixed it, and told her, look, it was your painter. So that kind of thing happens. And, fighting about it probably doesn't help, but making sure the client knows clearly that it wasn't your responsibility.
Yeah, a couple of those things are the thorough contract.
Yeah, and you know what? I learned somewhere that one of the things you want to put in your contracts, and again, this isn't typically my expertise, but one of the things that you want to make sure is in your contract is the things that are not included. And so quite often we put all the things that we're included in there, but all those things that you talked about throughout the process that you didn't include in the job, you want to put in there as it's not included. A little feedback there. Okay. Have we got any more? Oh, Brock wants to know if it's okay for them to do their own demo. Oh my goodness. I guess I would say no, but I don't know if it's tear down the whole house except for the foundation, maybe that's okay. I don't know. You have to use your own judgment. All right. Sorry, Don, I didn't see yours down there. Would you suggest the use of a HEPA filtration system for, let's see, to reduce the chances of dust contamination in the air in the lived? Oh, yes, definitely. I would highly recommend getting one of these machines that, you know, scrubs the air in a home, regardless of what you're doing. The only one I'm familiar with is Build Clean, and I've heard great things about them. The other thing that I would also say, though, and I learned this through machine, put it into your estimate as a line item, renting it to the client. So they are paying for that machine to be, now they don't have to know that, right? Many people have said they know it and they don't mind. They think it's great. But just put your equipment, anything that you own that's an equipment that you're going to wear out on their job, especially something that requires changing the filters, which I understand are pretty expensive, you know, put that into the line item, a line item in your estimate, you know, HEPA or a Build Clean, you know, system rental, 5 months, $25 a month or $50 a month or something, whatever it costs for you to do that. But definitely recommend air cleaners. If for no other reason that it really looks good. It creates that impression that you really, really care about dust control. And I believe you do, but oftentimes the clients don't see that you care, right? And so the machine sitting there running will show them that. Great question.
Yeah, for sure. And that kind of goes along with, even though the customer doesn't see it, it goes along with the change orders that are a zero balance.
Yes.
Even though, you know, it could be just something that you cover, it's always great to communicate that as in, we're taking care of this.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And that would be, you know, if I were doing change order presentation, definitely part of that would be a change order for anything that changes, even if you don't charge the client, just so they know, and it becomes the legal documentation for that change. We had a client one time that signed off on, we had to build a table. It was a special back then, I believe it was Corian, beautiful table that we built. They signed off on a redesign to make it fit the space. And the product was in, let's see, the cost was in a change order, but the design wasn't. We got to the end of the job, and the second client, this goes back to that client, that question about, you know, which client do you talk to? The second client said, "Who told you to make that change?" And we showed this woman her husband's signature on a document, and she said, "Who told you to listen to him?" And I said, "Well, we lose." So yeah, so I would definitely say any kind of change, time extension, red paint to blue paint, write it down, get it signed off on, and that way you don't have as much back and forthing when you get to the end of a project.
Yeah. Good stuff.
All right.
Okay. Well, Tim, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time. I know it's pretty late on your side of the country.
I know, it's almost bedtime for me.
Yeah. But we really appreciate your expertise,
Thank you.
and I do hope that you can come out here very, very soon.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
I am starting to travel again. Probably the 1st of May, I'll be doing my first, you know, trip, and I'll be able to, you know, we'll make it. I'll make it back out there.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, thanks to the rest of you for joining us. Thank you so much to our sponsors, KDL, Trex, Milgard, and Velux. So stay tuned for upcoming events, and please do join us for our coffee and chat next Thursday, March 25th at 7 a.m. So thank you so much coming up, and stay tuned for more. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.